New little creepy digital meter. Ew. Cheap looking thing. Anyway, cut my usage so far in half, which is good. Probably, I don't know. It's all a racket, you know. It's just being a customer is you already lost the game by being a customer. To really win, you have to figure out how not to be a customer. Kitty. You know, off-grid kind of bullshit. I gotta, come up with the perpetual motion thing now just to spite the electric company. But anyway, I'm probably walking the wrong way because it's gonna be wetter this way. But anyway, response video to conference report. Sort of, reaction video. No, just commentary on his commentary. He made a video, it's just the same old kind of thing. It's you're playing God if you overview, if you gain an ultimate or broader perspective on life, or attempt to, even generalization. You're playing God, you're doing religion if you figure out form and function, if you define things based on the available and the rather extensive facts. The implication is that there's some broader mystery that can't be understood. The mystery of the individual context, of the individual perception. As if that has some, just because it's complicated, it's automatically meaningful, is sort of their supposition. And therefore too much, too imperceivable. Obviously my counter argument is a path is a path. It can be understood in every meaningful detail. 2 or 3 sentences. The fact that I don't know where every leaf is, or every hoof print, every deer track, really quite not important, not relevant to anything we could have a meaningful conversation about. All the meaningful conversations are going to revolve around where it gets me, where it goes, why it goes there, that kind of stuff. And that's all knowable, all ascertainable. How many rings are in this tree here? If I cut it and find out how many rings exactly and all that kind of crap, it's nice detail, but not really relevant to understanding that it's hard and you can't put your hand through it, and you can't eat it, and you can't do this, can't do that. It just doesn't, this accusation, that life isn't understandable, unless we look through everyone's eyes and contemplate everybody's wacky bullshit perspective. Their Zen Buddha bullshit, their la bullshit, whatever. Any kind of bullshit they make up, bullshit. Any wacky narrative they have in their head, that we haven't understood life till we have practiced every, voodoo spell, creatable. Yeah, this water wants to get me. Slippery. I have to be careful. I'm of an age where I cannot afford to fall down and go boom as often. Anyway, so yes, this is an ongoing frustration, irritation in doing this philosophy thing, is the accusation that philosophy is some sort of voodoo, that can't be performed, expertly or perfectly, or satisfying all the necessary contingents and standards I've often complained about language, even brought that up a little, and certainly its inadequacies exist, but they're not insurmountable inadequacies, insufficiencies, inexactitudes. He brought up mathematics and made the claim that mathematics can't even do anything explicitly. And of course it can. You can certainly identify when something like pi is an incomplete number, an unfinished number. It could, if mathematics felt like it, write those functions in red, and as it does the math, every time it multiplies or divides by one of those functions, the number comes out red, indicating it's an imperfect number, inexact, or that they have transgressed a sufficient decimal point. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. I think it's just a silly accusation. Math is obviously very efficient. It works 99.99% of the time, and the only time when it stops working is when you start putting way too many mushy numbers into the mechanism. But anyway, that's just part of the jive. Just part of the propaganda. Is to take something as reliable as math and imply because it's the way we're doing it lacks a certain kind of perfection that we can't do it. Obviously, there is a perfection to 2 + 2 = 4. It has always been and will always be. So let's not play games. When it's right, it's right. We can be right in a lot of conclusions about what we're doing here, what our functionality is. Hey, let me log. Hi there, log. Hey there, buddy. What are you doing? You want to go sailing, don't you? I mean, you always wanted to go to the ocean, didn't you? Always want to go. Didn't you say that? You always wanted. You won't go. No, I'm going to hang out here in Inmendham. It's wobbly. It's there to fool you. It's there to make you step on it. It's like this thing. It's there to say, hey, step on me. But no, you don't want to step on that. Big mistake. Anyway. Where was I? So yeah, it's what we know is solid, and frankly, it writes a complete story. Very complete. Complete enough. You don't need to know how much Red Riding Hood weighs. It's not terribly irrelevant to the story. Or if she has painted toenails. It doesn't. We don't have every detail, but we have enough of them to surely know, where it begins and where it ends, and what it's doing in between. It's here. We have the information available. We have the knowledge available, and all we have to do is tell the story. Yeah, I'd argue that's what I'm doing in my philosophy. It's just telling the story of your existence, putting it in a context of, this particular storm in the history of the storm engine that is this biology, this environment, this nature thing we exist within. And I don't know, there's no point in detailing it in this video. I guess just more pointing out that we can sort of see the progression of it in history. You figure out that the stars aren't candy or gods or whatever candles or some other bullshit. You figure out the dynamic terms of associations with this biology and how the other organisms function, and start recognizing the parallels in your own functionality. Like you, a dog can be a wild animal, or it can be a highly trained, highly efficient, highly functional, civilized, domesticated life mate, even, without the sexual overtone, hopefully. And we are in the same circumstance. We can be well trained or poorly trained. We can understand or be obedient to principles of logic and have them discipline us, to perform, to walk the path, not to roam or cause trouble or, stick our nose where it doesn't belong and all that kind of whatnot. And part of that education now for humans, part of that discipline, that leash, is these facts of life, understanding that very fact, understanding that you have a psychology, that it's trained into its performance, that it's difficult to teach the old dog the new trick, that these things are part of our dilemma, that this takes some kind of work to do this all quite correctly. You can't just make it happen with wishes. You can't pretend you're doing good enough because they say so. But we know all this. We know the nature of the animal. We know it's built to do a certain kind of running, so to speak, scheming, hand tool manipulation. We see our attributes. We see where we got them from. And the question is, now we have this capacity to look over it all, build a model that has more than just our path in it, more than just our desire. We can see the other dogs, we can see the other players, see their functional, their substantive equality to ourselves, and the value in all of us getting the destination of satisfaction and comfort. We can see that allowing this brain to scheme just for this body is an obvious diminishment of its potential. It's limiting its potential if it works only for this. Intelligence is something grander than that. Knowledge. And it's just such a... So it's funny, it's like the only value that's sort of pure in its will. It's the will of intelligence to solve problems. I was sort of writing about that when I was watching Conference Report's video. That it's what the game is for intelligence. I've often said this. It only has the one mission: problem solving. And and so we're back to what's the simplest solution? What's the straightest line you can draw between problem and solution? Prevention. You can't get easier than that. And in this scenario, it's the rational choice, because there's no value outside of that correcting for the error, and there is no possibility of inefficiency outside of the maintenance of our need machines. And clearly, as the mud and worms and goop and slop would indicate, there's no intelligent function to this, king for a day or queen for a day bullshit. This winning at the cost of maybe your betters, and winning for a very short duration. A bunch of sisyphusing, for a moment at the peak, and then it's a horrid tumble, back down. So many metaphors, but this is all attainable knowledge, and the only obstacle to it is misinformation, is false answers to the questions, fake, phony, lies, deceptions, like God. So that's where it gets so offensive, is that we clearly can use our intelligence to know with quite a lot of certainty, a lot of reliability in the logic that God is a notion of imagination, not reality. There is no evidence or logic that can construct it as a viable truth, and we know that. And these people would give you pause or reason to question that, because somehow you haven't heard every silly story. Until you hear every single silly story, until you have imagined every crackpot made up distortion, somehow you don't know what music is. Wrong answer. So I guess that's what I have to say, is these people are selling the wrong answer to the question, do we know enough? The answer is decisively yes. We have more than enough information to understand our form and function. We have more than enough information to be able to answer questions of absolute and universal nature with confidence. Gravity is not going to change substantially. Nothing's going to be substantially broken by any new information. The truth is now written, in very good ink. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. Not for good cause, not for good reason. There's still snow in the back patio there. Still, almost April. Eesh. It is north side and it is pine tree shielded, but there's quite a wad of snow still. Anyway, until the next time, such and so forth. Am I still here? Yeah, I am. All right. Gee, I'm out of shape or something. Yeah, I thought I'd do a little add-on. I think I sort of missed recognizing that there is some, you have to argue through people's psychology when doing philosophy, and that's the tricky part, really, is that we have, it's not like we're all sitting here saying, I'm really horny for the truth, I'm really horny for the truth, give me the truth, feed me only the truth, we must understand the truth, I'm not putting it very well. we're not all Mr. Spock. We're not humiliated, by getting the wrong answer or something like that. I don't know. We don't have the same passion in terms of any devotion to explicit language or any devotion to proven, demonstrated descriptions of reality. So that's part of the problem, is people aren't as motivated or driven by, we don't gravitate to the better language, the saying it more precisely, that kind of thing. It's not something people just generally do. So we're left with a circumstance where we sort of have to somehow first have to establish the importance of that. And I guess what I'm saying is the real distraction is our sensibilities, our personal experiences. What has conditioned us, what our taste is, what has made us sick, so to speak, what we've been sick on. And these things are going to profoundly affect, how obvious certain things are, how easy to see things will be, how much your native sensibilities are consistent with the truth is going to say a lot about how comfortable you'll be with accepting a truth. I don't know exactly how to put that. If you have a worrying kind of try to not fail perspective versus a succeed perspective, there's a very functional difference between those two approaches. And people with those different psychologies will be seeking, as a practical matter, the same thing, but in such a different way. One person finds the things that aren't what it's looking for and knocks them out of the way to find what it is looking for, where the other person does the opposite. And you end up with a different, perhaps a different efficiency in finding through those different approaches of disposition. There's times where boldness is very useful. Being not blighted by practical concerns, for a failure. Maybe even in war, some of the, best stories are the stories that were so unlikely to end in victory. They were more likely to create failure, defeat. But because of circumstances, it worked out. And in hindsight, it was wrong. But in the practical reality is, what's reinforced is the rightness of the result. Overwhelms a rational judgment. I suppose if you live next door to a lottery winner, it might give you a false sense of doability. Might make it seem like winning isn't hard to do. That kind of thing. I don't know if I'm still getting to what I wanted to get to. I guess I'm just making a minor concession to the fact that we do have to talk philosophy to individuals that are largely still controlled by their psychology, and they're going to psychologically react to the performance of the philosophy as it's fed to them. If there's a distasteful bit to their psychology, they may reject the entire meal. They may generalize that experience with one piece to conditioned response to the entire play, kind of thing. So I guess you could say there could be elements or pieces of something that from a psychological perspective, the error is very loud. A minor error, and it's a catastrophic to your psychological comfort and capacity to accept any of it. I guess it's demonization. It's the concept in another form. Certainly I think we do it with politics. Once a politician does a few wrong things, then all of a sudden you perceive them as being incapable of doing anything right or anything honest. In the case of politicians and lawyers, that might be true. It might not be a problem or a defect of psychology, but we can, I think, logically understand that that's a danger of doing philosophy across people who are more psychology than they are. They're more a psychology than they are I don't. My brain wants to say philosopher, but it's probably the wrong thing to say. But they're, well, I think it does say it. They're just too owned, too caught up in being a psychology, and too negligent and unmindful of the power, the greater priority, of getting right answers, not comforting answers, of doing the logistical work, the frustrating, unpleasant work of philosophy, which is not being controlled, not being, I can't say not being psychologically reactive, because I just don't think we can be not psychologically reactive, but we can understand that our psychology will resist, and that you have to step over that resistance. Certainly as you get older, wiser, things become a little so solid you don't realize that there were times in your life where it wasn't so certain, that you did have to look in the mirror and face some obvious, what seems obvious now, this idea of the contemptibility of your own selfishness and your own ego, and recognizing the superficiality of much of your character. Once you've got 25 or 30 years from those realizations, they don't seem difficult anymore. But if you revisit when you were doing it, you can see, perhaps realize that it was rather psychologically traumatic, to not dislike yourself, but put yourself in perspective. Knock yourself down a notch or two, and you have to deal with the reality of failure, whether preventable or not. I don't know. Anyway, I think that'd be it. It's supposed to rain a lot, really. I got roof problems. Can't afford too much rain. Lose some of this. Thank you, snow. Look at that. It's kind of nice. Lovely green shingles. The house needs some work. Problem over here somewhere. Really don't want to mess with that roof, though. I don't even want to walk on it. What I can do. Anyway, that's not my problem. A couple of places there. Gotta find something other than shingles. Shingles suck. And make a roof out of something else. They don't even last anymore. It's supposed to be 25-year stuff, and it lasts 10. Hey, buddy. Having a little rest, are you? The rains are coming. Gonna have to rest somewhere else. It is kind of protected here, though. Sorry. Anxiety periods. Open the door. Keys. Better in my pocket. So anyway. Yeah. Till the next time. And such.